And tonight, I get to introduce one of my favorite persons in the world. And that is my baby daughter, my youngest daughter, Nathalia. Nathalia, she is 18. She is a senior at TKU, seeking a degree in biblical counseling. She is funny, she's hilarious. There is so much joy that she brings to our life. And it is my pleasure for me to introduce Nathalia Lima to bless us with this sermon tonight.
Thank you all for coming. For those of you that are visiting, thank you so much for visiting and joining us today. So today, as you can see on the screen, I am speaking. So I will be talking on the topic of pride and insecurity, which are two joys that I've gotten to deal with repeatedly in my lifetime. As I was preparing for this message, there were several ideas and topics that kind of came through my mind, but I had about exhausted all of them and given reasons why I shouldn't do them when G, of course, just randomly said something last week, and it just triggered this one verse to mind. And it's in Micah 6, verses 6 through 8. So I'll go ahead and read the passage. With what shall I come before the Lord, and bow down before the exalted God? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000 rivers of olive oil? Shall I offer my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Those are three such simple things, but we overcomplicate them so easily in our lives. It's kind of impressive. But essentially, this boils down to an issue of identity and the heart posture. So if our identity is anchored in God and our hearts are inclined towards him, then he will show us how to walk out these three things. And this is also a similarly reflected thing in the greatest commandment that Yeshua gives us in Matthew 22, verses 37 to 40. He says, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments." So think about it. How can we love our neighbor if we can't treat them with justice? How can we love our neighbor if we can't be patient with them? If we can't deal with them with mercy? If we can't treat them with humility? If we think we're above them? It's impossible to. This also begs the question, how does one love God then the way that he's saying to in this greatest commandment verse? So John 14 actually tells us how. In verse 23, he says, "All who love me will do what I say. My Father will love them, and we will come and make our home with each of them. Anyone who doesn't love me will not obey me. And remember, my words are not my own. What I am telling you is from my Father who sent me." So here we see again, as G taught us last week, obedience is the root of love. Similar to what she taught last week. Yes, obedience is the root of love. So what God wants from us is obedience. And that obedience, that submission to him, will allow us to be humble, to treat others mercifully, to treat them with grace the way that he wants us to. It'll also teach us how to love him to our fullest. So we love him to the fullest extent by listening to what he says, by obeying him, by submitting. And out of that love, that outpour shows us how to love others as well. It's a trend. It just goes from one thing to the next. And often our greatest obstacles to encountering God, understanding him, living life the way that he tells us to, and loving others is ourselves. And again, I speak from experience. We get in our heads, we jump to conclusions, we make things so much more difficult than they ever needed to be. And it's just our own pride and insecurity. We get in our own heads and we trip ourselves up. Before we even have a chance to start running, we trip ourselves up. So basically here, Micah shows us the ideal. This is how we should be living, justly, mercifully, and submitted to God. But how exactly do we do that? How do we get to a point where we can treat others with genuine humility, with not false humility, which is also easy to fall into? How can we treat others with mercy and with justice? And that is what we will be going into today in this lovely message. So, what does it mean to act justly and to love mercy? Simply put, justice is doing the right thing in a given situation with the laws and the moral codes that you have been given for us by God. He has shown us what is right, what is wrong. Our job is to execute justice to do those things. And the two words here used in the Hebrew are mishpat and asa. Asa, mishpat. So asa is do or make, and then mishpat is judgments. So it's literally just do judgments. Pretty easy. And then for love mercy, that word is a little more complicated. So it says ahavat chesed. Ahavat, love, and chesed, mercy. And that word mercy, as with many words in Hebrew, has like a dozen different meanings, if not more. But it boils down to this idea of loving kindness, of long suffering, of patience, of mercy. It has so much more meaning than just being nice to someone. It calls for consistency of lifestyle and a genuine submission, a day-to-day act, not just a general feeling. It takes more action. So again, mercy in our culture, kind of how we know it nowadays, is showing forgiveness and love to someone who doesn't necessarily deserve it, to someone that we could be justified in taking action against. So if G comes over here and smacks me upside the head, I would be justified to smack her right back. And my flesh would tell me to definitely do it. But mercy would tell me to take my hand off, back up, and forgive her, no matter how hard that would be. That is what we were called to do. And these two are intertwined. So to show justice, you must be able to be merciful. To be merciful, you must be able to show justice. And ultimately, God is the decider of justice. He is the one, again, it's from him that we know what's right and wrong, what is actual mercy. It's him that gives us the power to forgive, even when it's the last thing we want to do. So, for me, justice used to genuinely mean one thing, and that is revenge. Mercy didn't really have a place in my vocabulary at all, and she can attest to this fact. She nods emphatically, yeah. I didn't know how to be merciful, how to put aside my own anger in a moment to show mercy to someone. It was not something I ever knew how to do. And I know that may shock some of you, because I look so sweet and innocent, but no. I am small and violent, and it works. But, yeah, unfortunately, poor G, she knows this is very true. So by nature, I am very quick to hold grudges, to want vengeance, to want to exact pain on other people if they dare to hurt me. That's just how I am built. And a few years ago, we had a not so great experience with some people who were very hurt, and out of that pain, they hurt me and my family. So, in that experience, for a good 2 years, I would literally basically beg God to hurt them in return. Because I was like, y'all dealt me a serious emotional blow here. You deserve the same, if not more. Actually, yes, more. So God, please hurt them very badly. Thank you, love you. And thankfully, he was much smarter than to listen to me. Small, vengeful little creature that I am. And he actually came to show me that justice wasn't mine to exact or mine to demand. It is something that he gives out. He decides how it is done. It's not mine to demand. And how could I know in my completely fallible human knowledge what's right and wrong in a situation? I can judge as best I can given past experiences, but I can't know for sure. He's the only one that does. And the people that I was, again, basically begging him to hurt, they were also his kids. And in my own pride, I was thinking, you hurt me, so you should pay. But I've also hurt people in my life, my fair share. So who am I to ask him to hurt others who hurt people when that's exactly what I did? So it was just a big lesson on humility, just putting myself under his direction and letting him decide how things should play out in my life instead of trying to make it happen myself. So what does it look like to see justice God's way? Obviously, it's not begging God to hurt other people. Unfortunately, that doesn't count. In the Old Testament, we are given kind of the basics of how to deal with people, reparations, if we hurt them, what should we do in return, all that sort of good stuff. In Leviticus, he kind of outlines all of this for us, which is nice, so we actually know. And in the New Testament, Yeshua shows us how to apply the heart of these laws by showing us their full depth. So he expands on the topic of vengeance in Matthew 5, verses 38 to 40. He says, "You have heard it that said, eye for eye and tooth for tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well." And that goes so far against human nature, which is just no to any of that. I would rather not resist. I would rather resist. I would rather not be submissive and trust him to take care of things. And that's just how we're wired. That's just how we're built. And we also can see how mercy ties into justice in the parable of the unmerciful servant in Matthew 18. He gives us an idea of justice and mercy here, and forgiveness and how it all plays out. Verses 22 to 35 gives this account. "Then Peter came to Jesus and asked, 'Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? Up to 7 times? He's like, "Yeah, that should be enough, right? 7? Good number. I like that." And Jesus says, "No, I tell you 77 times. Therefore, the kingdom of heaven is like a king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. As he began the settlement, a man who owed him 10,000 bags of gold." Keep an eye on that number, 10,000 bags of gold. He ordered, was brought to him. And since he was not able to pay, the master ordered that he and his wife and children and all that he had be sold, and that he be put into jail to repay the debt. And at this, the servant fell to his knees before him, and he begs him, "Be patient with me. I'll pay back everything, I promise." But the servant's master took pity on him. He canceled the debt, not just gave him more time, he canceled it altogether, and he let him go. But when the servant went out, he sought out one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 silver coins. That's like, I owe someone $1 billion versus this guy owes me 50 cents. He seeks him out, and he's like, "You're going to give me those 50 cents. And he grabs him, he begins to choke him. He's like, "Pay back what you owe me," he demands. And his fellow servant, he does exactly what he did just now to his master. He falls to his knees and he begs him, "Be patient with me, I will pay it back." But he refused. Instead, he went off and he had that man thrown into prison until he could pay the debt. When the other servants saw what had happened, they were outraged and went and told their master everything that had happened. Then the master called the servant in. "You wicked servant, I canceled all your debts because you begged me to. Shouldn't you have had mercy on your fellow servant, just as I had on you?" In his anger, his master handed him over to the jailers to be tortured until he could pay back what he owed. This is how my heavenly Father will treat each of you, unless you forgive your brother or sister from your heart. So here we can see that mercy is part of acting justly. The right thing for that unmerciful servant to do was to extend the same amount of grace that he was shown to the other person. He acted unjustly. He chose to do the opposite. And also, forgiveness plays a huge part into this whole action of mercy. He should have shown forgiveness. That was the just act to do in that moment, to be merciful, to show forgiveness, and thusly act justly. And instead, he chose to do the opposite. And the master dealt with his servant by showing him mercy. He showed him what to do. This is how you should act to other people. It was only when this same mercy wasn't reflected back that the master was angered. God shows us mercy and he shows us justice so that in turn we can mirror those things, those qualities, those attributes in our interactions with others. So think of Enoch, think of Noah, David, other righteous figures in the Bible. They lived justly, and because of that, God made sure their names were kept throughout history until this day so that we still use them as examples for how to live. Were they perfect? Heck no. They screwed up more than I could ever imagine. No. They were sometimes pretty terrible people, but they were submitted to God, and that was the difference. Unlike other people of their time that just built altars and did things that were awful, they also did the same, but they had one key difference, and that was they were willing to repent. And once they were humble and submitted to God, their pride was broken enough to actually return to him and ask for forgiveness. That's when God was able to use them and take the lead. And because of their submission, because of their willing to be open, we still know them to this day, and their names haven't been forgotten in history. I was even reading the story of Ahab last night, and in the last few years of his life, this is like one of the wickedest kings to ever grace Israel's throne. He was horrible, worse than anyone that had come before that. The Bible is clear about that. But then, at the end of his life, he seems to kind of come to realize how much wrong he's done. And he is given a word by God, and he repents. He wholeheartedly repents. He does the prayer, fasting, whole shebang. He does it all. And God shows mercy on him because of that. He showed mercy on the wickedest king in Israel because he was willing to repent. Imagine how much more he'll show mercy to us, to his kids who have been faithful in the past, who are already submitted. It's such a powerful principle. I don't think we can fully wrap our heads around just how great his mercy is and how simple it is to receive it. Literally all we have to do is repent and submit, and that's it. In Luke 6:27-42, we're also charged with how to love our enemies and with why we should love our enemies, which Dad already kind of led into a bit, so thank you for that. Yeshua also brings up how to apply mercy and justice in our lives here. So he says, "But to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you." Going to verse 31, "Do to others as you would have them do to you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you lend to those that you expect a payment, what does that say about you? Sinners will do the same thing. But love your enemies. Do good to them. Lend to them without expecting anything in return. Then your reward will be great. You will be children of the Most High, because he is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Be merciful just as your Father is merciful. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will also be used to you." That is an amazing key right there. For the measure that we use, we will also be dealt with back in life. Just as it says in the Proverbs, I believe. You sow what you reap, basically. Or you reap what you sow. So if we are dealing with other people with contempt, with judgment, with hypocrisy, what can we expect in return? The exact same. Will God suddenly become a hypocrite and start hurting us through that? No. But that will be the consequence. For every action, there's a consequence, and that would be it for that. If we judge with grace and mercy and submission, though, that's the measure that God will use with us. So, really, we get to be the deciders here. It's part of free will. It's part of this whole free will package that we get to also choose how we will be judged by God. And that is it's both freeing and terrifying that we are the deciders of our own judgment. If we judge well here, we will be judged well. If we judge not so well here, we will be judged not so well. And it does give you something to think about, given how we judge situations right now, given how we deal with others, given our interactions. How would we be judged if we were judged right now by God? Also, how are we seeking justice? Are we seeking it by God's standards, which is just leave it up to him, he'll take care of things, or the world's standards, which is, I've got this, I'll take care of it, because I obviously know what's better. And that leads into walking with humility. So, again, humility is something that I have always struggled with in one way or another. I know for years on my goals, I would have think of others because I would just not do it. It was just not wired into me. I don't think of others very easily, not by nature. So oh gosh, I'm so sorry, both of you. But every week I remember y'all coming to me and saying, "Nathy, think of others. You think of G. If you did this, you could have hurt her." And I'd just be like, I don't care. She's fine. She's alive. I didn't kill her. She's okay. It didn't occur to me to think of others, to put others first, to put others' needs first. It was always just, oh, it's me. Hi, that's all that matters. I was wrong. So that was what I call pride. Not seeing others' needs, putting myself above their needs, above everyone else's needs, and just thinking of me and me alone. And that, I can tell you, friends, is not good. Really not good. So now we come to the matter of, again, walking humbly and its shadow, walking in pride. So throughout Scripture, it's made overwhelmingly clear. God does not deal well with the prideful. He despises the prideful. He will trip up the prideful. all of that. You hear it repeatedly in Proverbs, in Psalms, etc. Pride equals bad. Pride equals fall. Pride is not good. Don't do it. And it's our pride that seems to be the main thing that blocks us from God, because it's our pride that tells us that we don't need him, that we can handle it on our own, that we'll be okay without him, that, oh, I don't need to help them, they'll be fine. I just care about me. It's all me. It's our pride that keeps us from actually loving others, which, again, is his whole point for us in life, to love others, for us to be his arms reaching out into this world, showing justice and mercy and grace and goodness and humility. That's his whole point for us. So pride keeps us from that completely. It opens the door to jealousy, to insecurity, to comparison, unforgiveness, unrepentance. The list goes on. It makes us stubborn as all heck, and again, trust me, I speak from experience. It completely hardens you to anything that God may be trying to do with you, because you're not submitted, and if you're not submitted, then he doesn't have the open door to work in your life. And again, to those of you that know me, I have the tiniest bit of a stubborn streak. It's very small, but it's there. And yeah, so I have an idea of what I'm talking about when it comes to stubbornness. Yeah. And in recent years, through several conversations and that sort of thing, I've kind of come to realize that insecurity, which has also been like the second major issue that I've dealt with in my life, is a form of pride, because you're either seeing yourself or others as higher or lower, and in any case, it's a skewed sense of self. Again, not good, not who we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be able to see ourselves in the identity that God created us in, not as, oh, they have more, they have less, I should have had more, I should have less, I wish I had what they had, dang it, I don't. All of those things, it keeps us from enjoying who God made us to be and who he created us to be. Either way, it makes you less than who God made you to be, because you're not allowing yourself to come fully into who he meant for you to be. And it's such a ridiculous thought. The whole idea of insecurity, which again, I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, but that we know better than God in this situation. So like, oh God, you should have made me smarter. You should have made me this. You should have made me taller. You should have made me a different skin color. I don't know. You should have made me this or that or that. The list goes on. But in any case, we're saying, God, you screwed up. I should have been like this, but you got it wrong. I should have been like this. And the amount of pride that it takes to think a thing like that is unbelievable, especially when you think that insecurity is from a place of not pride, but of just fear. But it's beyond fear. It's, I know better than God, because I say God should have done this instead of what he did do. And in my own life, I have felt insecure about a cornucopia of wonderful things. And it always, again, comes back to the thought, hey God, you should have done this. Why didn't you? And actually, getting into drawing more helped me understand how he must feel, because in his eyes, we are a masterpiece. He made us exactly the way he wanted us to be, personality, mentality-wise, literally everything about us. He said, okay, I'm gonna do this, this, that, perfect, doesn't need to change a thing, just like that. It's good, good to go. And what we humans do is we go there and we pick apart everything that we think he did wrong. Like, oh, dang it, I'm too short, I'm too tall, I'm too this, I'm too that. Why didn't you do it right? And he's just there like, you were perfect. What are you talking about? I made you how I wanted you to be. Why aren't you happy? And we're just like, no, you should have done better. We told you. As if we know. And just to think of it all is so ridiculous now. It's so funny. And it's something that I still struggle with. So again, I am speaking to the choir here. But it's just such a ridiculous line when you think about it. Man, devil really gets us with some of those. But again, it's basically the idea that I, Nathalia, the perfect artist of the world, knows better than you, God, because you should have done this when you didn't. And again, just the remarkable amount of pride and dang near stupidity that takes to think is kind of impressive. And then also in regards to my calling and my path in life, I've often felt insecure since I honestly don't have that much experience in life. Like my dad said, I'm 18, I'm a baby, I don't know much. I haven't done much. I haven't experienced too much of the world, not the bad parts. And I haven't gone through the same sufferings and trauma and abuse and addictions and everything that people that I would be dealing with. So it makes me think, who am I to even try to help them when I haven't experienced what they've experienced? How could I possibly even put myself in that position to think that I could help them? But in doing that, that's also a sort of pride, because I'm thinking, God can't help me understand them. I'm thinking it takes human knowledge over God's wisdom to actually help people. I'm putting human experience and human knowledge over the wisdom that He's already offered freely. And yeah, again, not so smart on my part. Ultimately, it's a pride that I've had, that I would basically only be a good counselor if I've been dragged through the mud and back again, because then I could have the same experience, so I could relate to them. But in reality, again, it's so much simpler. God already knows. He has seen their hearts. He's seen their tears. He can help me understand what I need to understand at a given time. And it's as simple as that. And ultimately, pride comes from a place of misunderstanding identity. You think you're either higher or lower. Others are higher or lower. And I have found myself on both ends of the spectrum, both thinking that I am higher than others and that I'm lower than others. And in all of those cases, it just comes down to comparison. The fact that I am even thinking higher and lower, I am comparing myself to others. I am comparing what God gave me to what others have. And deciding, again, based on my own human knowledge, that what they have is better than what I have. It's as simple as that. It comes down to that. And basically, the whole issue with that is that I haven't understood my identity fully. So I haven't been grounded in who I am and who I'm supposed to be. And so that door for comparison is wide open, because I see, oh, I don't know who I am, but that person has this and that. That looks kind of nice. I would like that. That'd be cool. And then I'm constantly thinking, I wish I had what they had, because I don't know what it is that God's given me to start with. So I can't see the gifts that I have. So whatever anyone else has, it looks great by comparison, because I can't see anything in me. And that's more pride. That's just blocking me from actually seeing what God's allowed me to have. And pretty much the whole issue of identity has shown itself in two main ways. In my calling as a counselor and in friendships. So for my calling, I've often made the classic error of mistaking my own profession for my identity. So I have established so much of who I think I am as a person on counseling, which I've only had for 3 years, so I don't know why, but oh well. I just chose that, I guess, and now I have that. And so if I ever fail as a counselor, even in friendships, in family relationships, anything, if I fail as a counselor, I feel like I have failed as a person. Like, the fundamental reason why God put me here, the one thing I'm good at, like, it's being taken away. And like, suddenly I'm useless. So if I miscounsel someone, or if it doesn't go completely the way that I would have wanted it to, I'm like, bam, don't have any use, that's nice. And I know that's faulty thinking, and I know just how completely unfounded and incorrect that is, but that's just what the lies that we get will tell you, that that's the truth. And in reality, callings are areas of our lives that God has given us some gift or affinity for. So in my case, it is counseling. I happen to be good at it. He has let that be something that I can help others with. But ultimately, it's just the areas in our lives that He says, I want you to be a conduit in this. So you have a great voice. I want you to touch people with your singing. And that's how I'll touch earth, with your singing. Or you are an amazing artist. So I'm going to take your art, I'm going to touch people through that. Or, whatever it may be, fill in the blank. But it comes down to, basically, it's just our little niche. For while we're here, for this blink of an eye that we're here on earth, it's something to give us joy and to use to give others joy as well. And it's not something to build who we are around. It's something, again, to give us joy. It's a little mission. It's a task to complete, but it doesn't make the whole of who we are. And I have thoroughly confused those. And really, when I fail as a counselor is only when I'm depending on my own knowledge, when I'm depending on my own wisdom, when I'm saying that I think I know what you should do in the situation, instead of, here's what God's saying. And I just immediately set myself up for failure. Because if I am not coming from the right source, then how could I possibly succeed to start with? It's not possible. And even in friendships, I tend to be very easily jealous and insecure. And as a result of a few past things from the people that I mentioned earlier, they weren't great for my mental health. And lately I've realized it's because I've been finding a lot more of my identity in those friendships. So in how good a friend I feel I'm being to them, or in whatever affirmation I'm getting, instead of in the fact that I am God's, it's been like, okay, how good a friend am I? How am I doing at this? How am I doing at that? And I put way too much pressure on it. And as a counselor in training, I can tell you that is not healthy. It's not good, not what's supposed to be. And in reality, my identity as a whole comes from God, from being his child, not from being so-and-so's counselor or so-and-so's friend. It comes from being God's kid, and that's it. And it's such a simple thing, but it's so hard to fully understand and to come into, just knowing that being his is enough. And because I am his daughter, I have worth, and my life bears meaning. And that's really all there is to it. And as if that isn't enough, he not only says, hey you, I want you to be my kid, he says, I'm going to give you something special to do while you're here, because I might as well. So not only am I going to call you to be my kid specifically, I am also going to give you something to do to touch others and to give you some joy. And that's what our calling is. And that's where he comes into it. It's his little thing to help us anchor heaven down onto earth. And again, to bring us some satisfaction in life. So we're not just here wandering aimlessly until he takes us. Instead, we're his kids, and we have a purpose, and we have a plan, and we have a reason. Reason for existing, a reason for being here. And it's amazing. He says, I made you with intention, with design. You're not an accident. You are irrevocably mine. And here's something that you can do for me while you're here. And all it takes to enjoy this amazing, unbelievable gift is literally just being humble, is just seeking his direction first and foremost. It's submitting to him, however that looks, wholeheartedly, to his will in our lives, to his way and his word. And simply put, as Proverbs tells us, 22 verse 4, it's the fear of the Lord. So once we fear God, it strikes the fear of God into us, right? It makes us humble before man, because we know there's something much greater above us. There's something way higher than us out there. We are not all that there is. So there's something greater that is calling us to live better, calling us to walk in a different way than we usually would. And how does it look then, this humility, this absolute submission? Philippians chapter 2, verses 2 through 11, they say, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Yeshua. That is the heart of the matter. Humility is when we come to the end of ourselves and see the needs of other people. It's when we realize how small we are in the grand scheme of things and how much more there is outside of us. And it's when we come to the place of respect for who God made us to be that we can submit the right way. Not submitting to someone being domineering or oppressing us, but submitting to their interests and looking out for their interests too, not just ours, looking out for what they might want instead of just us. And it's really when we reach a place of serving others above ourselves, which I still haven't reached yet, but I'm working on it. And the way that God designed it is pretty much, if everyone treats one another the way that he said, right, we're all looking out for each other, we're all putting each other's interests above one another, then everyone is cared for. I'm looking out for you, you're looking out for me. Everyone is covered and cherished and loved the way that it's supposed to be, because from that submission comes the way to actually love others. And from that, we are able to in turn be loved by others because they also know how to submit. And it's like this chain link. It goes from one to the other to the other. Once one learns to love, another can learn to love, and another. And everyone in turn can receive that affection that God planned for us to have from the very start. And again, just to clarify, it doesn't mean that we let ourselves be turned into proverbial doormats that just anyone can traipse all over us. No, we are God's kids. We're the daughter of a king, kids of a king, sorry, not all of you are girls. We are the kids of a king. He is the warrior. He is the one who commands armies of angels with a single word. So we are not anyone to just be thrown around or treated just however. We deserve respect. We dang well better take it. It's our job to ask for that respect and to create a place where we are respected. And in turn, we can show respect to others because we first known it ourselves. We can only show to others what we've learned ourselves. They've told us that repeatedly in counseling classes. You can only give what you have. So if you have self-respect, you can give self-respect to others. You can teach them how to do it. But if you don't, then you're creating an all-around very unhealthy situation. And again, we are the kids of a king, so we deserve respect. And because of that, we can be respected. Again, the chain link. And humility, essentially, it just comes down to this aspect, this submission and obedience to our Father. When we do that, we can love one another with patience, with justice, with mercy. If we are submitted to Him, He'll show us how. If we're not submitted to Him, then we have to try to fumble it out on our own. And naturally, since we're fallen people, we're going to fail because we don't know how to do things on our own. We're like our little ones back there. We need help. We need someone to guide us along and show us what to do and when and how. And if we're not submitted to someone to show us that, then we're walking blind, completely blind. So, to recap everything that has been spoken of today, we started with a picture of how we should look. We saw in Micah that call that God issued to His children, explaining how things should look. Justice, mercy, humility. That's how things should look, and that's how He shows us. We also looked at one main pitfall that can stand in our way of living life this way, and that is pride. Pride stops us from loving others and from keeping others above us. It makes us think that they are somehow undeserving of that, or that we are undeserving of that. In either way, someone's not getting loved, which is the whole point, because it's all about relationship in the end. And finally, we saw the antidote for that pride, which is humility. Humility is made up of this constant submission to God, this consistent submission, and it's a daily thing. It's not just a one and done, good, prayed for humility, that's done, great. Nope, every day you have to keep up with it. Make me humble, make me submitted to others in a healthy way. Teach me how to submit myself to you, and teach me how to treat others the way that you want me to. And out of that obedience and submission, He shows us, He guides us, each of us in our own tailor-made way, the way that we need to be taught how to walk this path that He called us to, how to love others the way that He wants us to. Psalm 89, verse 14 reminds us, righteousness and justice are the foundation of your throne. Love and faithfulness go before you. That is the God that we serve. The pillars of His throne are righteousness and justice. And before we even see Him, there's His love and faithfulness. That light that shines out from Him, that lets other people know God's coming. And it's that God that we serve, that God that we're supposed to be mirrors of here on earth, the one that we're supposed to pattern our lives under. So it's my prayer today that we all be able to learn how to make righteousness and justice the foundations of our lives, however that looks, and that we would also leave this legacy of love and mercy and selflessness. That would go before us. That when we go into the next world, when we see Yeshua face to face, we can say, hey, people knew me because of this. People knew me because I was loving, because I was faithful, because I acted with justice and mercy, even when it was hard. I did it, Dad. I did it. I did what you told me to. That's the end goal here, that we would be able to have that sort of legacy here on earth. So, I will leave you with these questions that I have been pondering myself. Given the way that we judge situations and that we judge others now, how do we think we would be judged? Where is your identity currently anchored? Is it in God? Is it in people, possessions, jobs? Where is it? And how can we walk more in mercy and steadfast love with those around us? Also, have you seen pride affecting, or insecurity or jealousy affecting any of your own relationships? And if so, are there steps that you can take to start repairing those? Is there something that you can do on your part? Because the way that God has set things up, change starts with us. We decide when change happens. We can make it happen by deciding, I need to act differently in this way, and then asking for help and choosing to act different by submitting to Him. And however that looks, I would recommend just thinking about it and seeing what you can do on your part to make amends if such a thing is needed. Again, thankfully, it only takes one person making the decision to change for there to be change. And as a reminder of how we are to love, one that I know I need day to day, constantly, I'll leave you all with 1 Corinthians 13, verses 1 through 8. If I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy, and can fathom all mysteries and knowledge, and if I have faith that can move mountains but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor, and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I am nothing. Love is patient, and love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered, and it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects. It always trusts. It always hopes. Always perseveres. In short, love never fails. So this week, let's make it a point to look out for these opportunities to show this love that never fails. Let's see how we can start showing more justice and love, humility, mercy to others as it's needed. If they're strangers even, or even just in our families, with our friendships, let that be a constant reminder on our minds and in our hearts. So thank you all for listening and for allowing me this opportunity to speak. It has been an honor. Thank you.
But Natty, thank you. Thank you for, wow, this is your first message that you deliver. And what happens with that, a great responsibility comes upon us when we have to step up. And one of the reasons believers don't mature is because they don't have the pressure of that responsibility. So we typically can live whatever life we want, because we don't have to serve anybody. We can just go to church to be served. We're changing that. We're changing that. And this is, I believe that it is a healthy pressure, I would say, that responsibility, because I think this week has been a little bit different for you, hasn't it? Gianna, was it the same thing for you? Yes. And all of those, Lucy, just the preparation. Just the time that you need to spend hearing from God. In all of these, if you can put that last slide, please, Dylan. All of these areas of your life, you're studying about them. It's not just to talk about them. But the Word of God is showing you, okay, where do you need to improve in these areas? So God challenges, the Holy Spirit challenges, and as a result, we grow more. And we become more useful in God's kingdom. So if you would stand and extend your hands to receive this blessing. God said when we speak this blessing, the promise is that He will come and He will bless you. So I can't seek anything better than that, but God's blessing is putting the name of God on you, and He would come and bless you. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make His face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up His countenance upon you, and may He give you peace. Yevarechecha Adonai ve'ishmerecha, Yair Adonai panav elecha vihunecha, Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. B'shem Yeshua HaMashiach. Have a great week. God bless you all.